I moved to a remote cabin in Alaska a few months ago. I thought it would be perfect for my research as a wildlife biologist. It was cozy and quiet, surrounded by tall, snow-covered trees. I was excited about the peace and convenience. At first, everything felt normal. I got into a daily routine. Each morning I went outside to collect data on animal tracks. The days were cold, and the nights were still. It was what I expected, but on my second night, I heard it, a soft tapping sound against the windows. At first, I thought it was just branches in the wind, but as I listened closer, it didn't sound random. My heart began to race as I scanned the dark outside. I didn't want to find out what it was, so I just stayed where I was. The next few nights went by quietly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One morning I opened the door and spotted prints in the snow. They weren't from any animal I recognized. They led right up to my door and then stopped. I looked around but felt uneasy. I thought maybe it was all in my head. Days later, a note slipped under the door caught my eye. It simply said, "I see you." A chill ran down my spine. Was this a prank? I couldn't believe it, but I felt like I was being watched, and that feeling grew stronger. One night, as I was reading, I heard my name. Aaron. The sound was soft, but clear. I froze. I couldn't tell where it had come from, and I didn't see anyone outside. Was it just the wind? I brushed it off, but the voice stuck with me. A few nights later it happened again. I stepped outside into the cold. I called out, "Is someone there?" No response, just silence. And then the tapping sound started again. It felt closer this time. I walked toward it, heart pounding. Maybe I should have stayed inside. Then I saw it. A figure stood between the trees at the edge of the darkness. I squinted but couldn't make out any details. The tapping stopped. I don't know how long I stared. When I blinked, it was gone. A cold emptiness settled in me. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. The air turned still. I turned back toward the cabin, feeling an overwhelming dread. The sense that I was never truly alone nagged at me. I wanted to brush it away, but I couldn't. I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or if the wilderness held secrets I couldn't uncover. What was out there, really? The next day, I tried to push everything from my mind. I focused on my research, hoping to distract myself from the unease. I spent hours outside, studying the tracks I had found. I noted the shapes, sizes, and depth in the snow, trying to convince myself that the data would help me make sense of this place. But each snap of a branch and rustle of leaves kept pulling me back to the mysterious figure from the night before. That evening, I sat by the fire, trying to enjoy the warmth, but no matter how many times I turned the pages of my book, the words blurred together. The tapping sound came back, softer this time. I leaned in closer to the windows, holding my breath. A shadow crept along the edge of the light, spilling from inside. "Get a grip, Aaron," I muttered to myself. I was imagining things. Probably just an animal. A few minutes later, I decided to check outside. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The cold nipped at my cheeks, stark against the heat I'd left behind. The trees loomed above me, their branches swaying gently. I scanned the area, heart pounding, but everything looked normal. While I was outside, I spotted more tracks in the snow, fresh ones leading away from my cabin. I followed them, my curiosity overpowering my fear. The prints dug deeper into the ground, almost as if whatever made them had been running. They led me toward the tree line, stopping just short of a cluster of bushes. My breath hitched when I noticed something partially hidden in the snow. I knelt down and brushed away the snow. My fingers met something solid and cold, a small, dark object. I picked it up, feeling a chill run through me. It was a wooden carving, intricately detailed. It looked like a face, twisted and unnatural. The moment I turned it over, I felt a wave of dread crash into me. There was a message carved into the bottom. "You shouldn't have come here." My instincts screamed at me to run back to the cabin. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the carving tightly. I turned to head back, but everything felt different. The air grew thicker, the trees loomed closer. Then I heard a rustling behind me, sharp and sudden. I froze, squinting into the darkness. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence answered me. Panic set in. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes on my back. Just as I turned to sprint toward the safety of my cabin, I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, that same shadow darting between the trees. My blood ran cold. I rushed inside, heart racing, and locked the door. I glanced at the carving in my hand again, breathless. I realized I wanted answers, not just about that figure, but about the madness of this place. But the deeper I dug, the more I felt I was in over my head. That's when I heard it again, a whisper just outside my window. "Aaron, it's time to come outside." My heart dropped. It wasn't just a voice, it was a call I couldn't ignore. I stood frozen in front of the window, the carving still clenched in my hand. "Aaron, it's time to come outside." The voice, soft and insistent, echoed in my mind. I shook my head, trying to dispel the heaviness that settled over me. I couldn't just open the door. Whatever was out there wanted me to follow. But the pull was strong. I felt an odd sense of obligation, like I was needed. I backed away from the window, heart racing. I couldn't ignore the message on the carving. "You shouldn't have come here." Panic flashed as I thought about what I'd gotten myself into. I needed to know more, but was it worth the risk? I paced around the cabin, searching for distractions, anything to keep my mind off that damn voice. My eyes darted toward the door repeatedly, the urge to engage with the unknown gnawing at me. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed outside, making me jump. I whipped around, flashlight in hand, heart hammering in my chest. I aimed the light toward the door, my breath halting as I listened closely. The sound came again, this time closer, followed by a frantic rustling beneath the porch. "Is someone there?" I called out again, voice trembling. This time I felt silly. Then, as if in response, a figure emerged from the shadows. I caught a glimpse of a person, a silhouette dashing sideways, slipping around the side of the cabin. My heart leaped into my throat. There was something familiar about the way it moved, but I couldn't place it. Fueled by adrenaline, I steadied my flashlight, illuminating the area outside. My breath quickened as the beam danced across the snow. I saw no one, just fresh tracks, but they didn't look like mine. They were smaller, creating a confusing patchwork as if there were multiple beings out there. I felt the panic gnawing at my gut give way to determination. I couldn't stay hidden forever. Whatever was happening was connected to this place, and I was involved. I took a deep breath and opened the door, just a crack peeking outside. The moment felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath along with me. Memories of the tracks flooded my mind. The carving, the voice, and the shadow, they all intertwined. The idea that something was trying to connect with me sent chills down my spine, yet I felt an irresistible urge to step into the snow. Then I saw it again. Movement at the edge of the trees, just beyond the reach of my light. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was a figure, hunched and low to the ground. My heart raced as I squinted, trying to discern its features. That face, the twisted carving, seemed to mimic a shape in the trees. Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in pitch blackness. I cursed under my breath and fumbled with the batteries, but I could feel the weight of eyes on me. I could hear soft whispers merging with the wind. Fear coiled tightly around my chest. I took a hesitant step outside, drawn to the mystery. "What do you want?" I shouted into the darkness, hoping for an answer. A low chuckle rippled through the cold air, and that familiar voice whispered again, "Aaron, it's time." In that moment I realized I had crossed a line, and whatever this was, it would not be easy to escape. I stepped out into the cold, leaving the safety of the cabin behind. The snow crunched under my feet. Each step felt heavier, my pulse racing as the darkness closed in around me. My eyes strained to see through the thick blackness, but I had lost the figure I'd glimpsed just moments before. Then I heard it again, soft movement like footsteps in the snow. I directed what remained of my flashlight toward the source, but the beam only revealed a cluster of trees swaying gently in the wind. A sudden fear gripped me. What if I wasn't alone? Aaron. The voice was more insistent this time, a melody on the wind. Come. I hesitated, the carving still gripped tightly in my hand. There was something about the voice that felt wrong, like it was singing a siren's song meant to lure me in. But curiosity crept in alongside my fear. After all, I had come to discover the mysteries of this place. "Show yourself," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. The only answer was silence, heavy and oppressive. The wind picked up, howling like a banshee, and I instinctively took a step back. That's when I caught a shimmer out of the corner of my eye. Something darted between the trees. My heart raced as I focused on the movement, feeling the adrenaline pump through me. I moved toward the trees, driven by an inexplicable urge. As I approached, my breath forming small clouds in the cold, I saw something white flashing against the darkness. Hope ignited within me. Maybe it was just the snow reflecting the moonlight. I strained my eyes, trying to pinpoint the shape. Then I noticed it. There was a figure, hunched over and half hidden behind a trunk. I squinted, trying to see, and the figure slowly turned toward me. My heart dropped. It was a small child, no older than 10, but there was something off about the way he stared at me. His eyes were hollow, shadowed, as though he hadn't seen sunlight in ages. "Help me," he whispered, voice almost lost in the wind. "They won't let me go." Fear gripped me. I took a step back. "Who won't let you go?" The child pointed toward the deeper woods, his finger shaking. "You have to follow me, please." Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to retreat back to the cabin. But the carving throbbed in my palm, reminding me of the connection I was beginning to understand. I felt caught between dread and intrigue. In that moment of hesitation, the wind shifted, carrying more whispers. I thought I heard other voices, melting into the sound of a distant, eerie chant. I glanced back at the cabin, knowing I could run. But something deep inside pulled me closer to the ghostly child. I swallowed hard. "Wait!" I shouted. "What do you mean?" But before I could gather my wits, the child slipped behind the tree, disappearing into the shadows. I had a choice: to retreat to the safety of the cabin, or to follow the apparition into the night and unravel the sinister web that had ensnared me. With a deep breath, I took a step forward. That's when I saw it. A set of footprints, smaller than mine, leading deeper into the woods. I hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision crash over me as the whispers grew louder, enveloping me in a chilling embrace. What awaited me down that path? I had to know. I followed the footprints into the darkness, shivering as the biting cold wrapped around me like a wet blanket. The snow crunched beneath my feet, but I barely noticed. My senses were focused entirely on the figure, the child who had captured my attention. Those hollow eyes haunted me, begging for something I didn't fully understand. The trees loomed over me like silent guardians, black shapes against the night sky. I could feel the space around me shift, pressing in with whispers that tickled my ears. A strange energy pulsed through the air. It felt ancient and wrong, a gravity that pulled me deeper into the forest, away from the safety I had left behind. I stumbled over a hidden root, falling against the cold, damp ground. My heart raced, the chill of fear surging through me. As I pushed myself back up, I caught sight of something gleaming in the snow. I knelt down, brushing aside the powder to reveal a small silver locket. The latch was frozen shut, but I could see the faint outline of something inside. A picture, a note. I wanted to open it, but a sense of dread washed over me. Then I remembered the child. His voice was still echoing in my mind. "They won't let me go." I pocketed the locket and steadied myself, peering into the blackness ahead. The footprints were still there, leading further into the woods. As I pressed on, the whispers grew louder, filling my head with soft words I couldn't quite catch. Then suddenly I heard it, a low, guttural growl nearby. My heart plummeted. I scanned the darkness, my pulse pounding in my ears. It had come from my right, just beyond the trees. "Aaron!" the voice called again, more desperate now. I felt like I was being torn in two. This wasn't a game. I could turn back, good instinct screaming at me to retreat, but the carving pulsed lightly in my pocket, pushing me onward. The woods grew thicker, the air denser and the ground uneven underfoot. I pressed forward, desperate to find the child again. I felt drawn deeper and deeper into the heart of the forest, the oppressive weight of darkness almost suffocating. Then, ahead, I saw a faint glow. My breath hitched in my throat. Was it a campfire or something else? I approached slowly, glancing nervously over my shoulder. The growling had stopped, swallowed by the increasing sound of my own heartbeat. As I neared the light, I saw it was just an old lantern hanging from a tree, flickering ominously with an unnatural flame. Just as I reached it, I felt a chill sweep over me. A shadow moved at the edge of my vision, and I whirled around. There stood the child, now clearer than before. But he wasn't alone. 3 more figures emerged from the trees, faces obscured but their intentions clear. "Leave him!" one of them hissed, the wind carrying the words to my ears. "You don't belong here!" I glanced back at the child, who looked more terrified than ever. "Please, help me!" he cried, but the urgency in his voice was drowned out by the rising wind. I had walked straight into a trap, and the air tasted of ice and foreboding. I felt the weight of their eyes on me, as if they were waiting for me to make my next move. I had to decide. Would I save the child, or escape while I still could? I assessed the distance to the lantern. Maybe I could reach it, use it as protection. But the moment I took a step forward, the ground shifted beneath me. The shadows began to close in. Then everything went dark. I opened my eyes to a deep silence. Darkness surrounded me, thick as velvet, and the air was still. I felt the cold seeping into my bones, but I was lying down, and my body ached in protest. Confusion filled my mind as I struggled to recall what had happened. The child, how had I lost him? I pushed myself up, blinking until my eyes adjusted. The lantern. I was no longer near it. Instead, I found myself in a small clearing, the trees standing guard like sentinels. The ground was covered with an eerie frost, the kind that glimmered under faint moonlight, reflecting odd shapes and patterns. I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my spine. A voice broke the silence, familiar and desperate. "Aaron." It was the child again, but closer this time. I scanned the area, heart racing, searching for any sign of him. "Where are you?" I called, my voice trembling in the cold air. No answer, just darkness, heavy and consuming. Then I heard it, a rustling to my left, followed by a soft whimper. I turned instantly, excitement competing with fear. "Is that you?" I shouted. The rustling grew louder, and out stepped the child, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "Run!" he screamed, his voice trembling. "They're coming! We have to go!" Without waiting for a response, he turned and sprinted into the trees. My instincts kicked in, and I followed, adrenaline flooding my veins. Branches whipped at my face as we dashed deeper into the forest. I barely noticed the pain. All that mattered was his safety. Suddenly, the growling returned, loud and feral, echoing through the night. My heart dropped. It was closer than before. "What's chasing us?" I managed to ask, my breath coming in gasps. The child didn't respond. just glanced over his shoulder, eyes wide with fear. "Faster! Hurry!" I pushed harder, navigating the tangled roots and thick undergrowth. The shadows seemed to twist, following us like a living thing. I dared a look back and saw a dark shape, a mass of movement closing in. Terror gripped me. It moved faster than I could have imagined. The underbrush broke away, and there was a small rise. I reached it and felt a moment's relief as I scrambled up, but I didn't slow down. The sound of the growling grew louder, a sinister promise of what was to come. I caught up to the child, who stood frozen at the edge of a small ravine. "This way," he urged, but my feet froze. Below us, a narrow path twisted into darkness, far away from our pursuer. "Are you sure?" I hesitated, glancing back. That shape was closer. I could see sharp teeth glimmer in the dim light. "Now!" he shouted. I didn't think. I jumped, landing unceremoniously on the hard, cold ground. It felt safer down there, but the overwhelming darkness loomed at all sides. Just as the child leaped beside me, the growls transformed into something more frightening. Cries, screams that made my stomach drop. "They won't let us go, I told you," he cried, terror spilling from him now. That's when I realized the truth. There was something far worse than the beast in the shadows. Someone was waiting for us in the dark, and I had no idea what I had just stepped into. The darkness closed in around us, thick and impenetrable. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, drowning out the sounds of the forest. The child pressed against me, his small frame shaking. "We have to move," he whispered, but I felt paralyzed by fear. "Where?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. The narrow path before us seemed to extend into an abyss. "Follow me," he insisted, tugging at my arm. I hesitated, eyes darting back to where the growling echoed. The darkness shifted, and suddenly a pair of glowing eyes emerged. They filled the void, hungry and searching. "Now!" the child shouted again, determined. I couldn't let hesitation hold me back. I nodded and reflexively took his hand, squeezing it tightly. Together we darted down the narrow path, slipping on the icy ground. The cries grew louder, a cacophony of whispers and moans that curled around us like smoke. It felt as if the thin air was heavy with the weight of unseen eyes, watching, waiting. My thoughts raced as we pressed on. What were those sounds? And who was waiting in the dark? Minutes felt like hours as we ran, weaving in and out of trees that reached out like hands trying to pull us back. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded. Just ahead, I spotted a thin shaft of light piercing through the tight gap of two trees. "There!" I shouted, pointing. The child nodded, and we raced toward it, fueled by desperate hope. The light grew brighter, transforming the air around us. But just as we reached the edge of the clearing where the light shone, a low growl rumbled behind us again. I turned, dread knocking the breath from my lungs. The outline of a large creature took form behind the trees, muscles rippling beneath its dark coat. I couldn't make out the details, but I could feel its gaze boring into me. My mind screamed for action. "Run!" I yelled, pulling the child forward. We broke into the clearing, the brightness washing over us like a wave. But as we crossed the threshold, something shifted. A barrier, a sudden stop that sent us tumbling forward. We hit solid ground, but the air felt different. I looked up, everything blurring as panic surged. "What happened?" I breathed. The clearing was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. Shadows danced around us, twisted shapes that echoed the trees, but the ground was warm, pulsating lightly beneath my hands. I leapt to my feet, but the child seemed transfixed. "What is this place?" he murmured. Fear coiled tighter in my gut. "We've got to keep moving." But the child didn't respond. His gaze was fixed at something behind me. I turned, dread creeping back in as I realized the growling had stopped. Then everything went silent. It was too quiet. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. I just knew someone was here, and they were waiting. The stillness stretched on, wrapping around us like a thick fog. I could hardly breathe. I reached out to the child, feeling his small hand, trembling, and pulled him to me. "We need to go," I whispered, but my voice felt lost in the heavy air. Without another word, I scanned our surroundings. The clearing was vast, but felt like it confined us. Shadows moved, albeit not in the way they should. They twisted unnaturally, as if trying to escape the daylight. I couldn't shake the sense that something was monitoring us, searching for the right moment to strike. Then I noticed it. A shimmering ribbon of light snaked along the edge of the clearing, casting flickering glows against the warm earth. Curiosity took over. "Look," I said to the child, nudging him gently. "We can follow that light." He nodded, finally torn from his trance. We stepped cautiously toward the light, but as we did, the shadows around us shifted in response. The warmth beneath my hands felt like a heartbeat, but I had no idea what it meant. We took a few steps closer, and that was when I heard a whisper. It was delicate yet chilling, laced with a familiarity that sent shivers down my spine. "Help us." It seemed to beckon. I instinctively knew those words weren't meant for us. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my heart racing. The child shook his head, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. I didn't want to frighten him, but I couldn't ignore the danger rising. "Let's keep moving." We hurried along the edge of the clearing, the light guiding us forward. But then we stopped dead. There, caught in the glow, was a figure, a woman, draped in tattered white fabric that floated around her like smoke. Her eyes were hollow, dark pits that seemed to draw the light away. Panic clawed at my throat. What are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "Protect me," she mourned, and the air thickened with despair. The child pressed against me, frightened. I wanted to run, but I felt rooted to the spot, a prisoner of my own fear. Then the shadows shifted again. The growling returned, closer now. "They're coming," the woman said, her voice barely a whisper. "You must choose." "Choose what?" I demanded, my mind racing. I looked around, feeling suffocated. The glow of the light started to dim, flickering like a dying flame. The child tugged at my sleeve. "We can't stay here," he urged, fear echoing in his voice. I didn't know how much longer we could stay without being devoured by whatever lurked just out of sight. But before I could respond, something pierced the edge of the clearing, a massive creature, its eyes luminous against the fading light. It let out a deep, growling snarl that rolled through my chest. I was torn between the haunting woman and the menace behind her. "What do we do?" I cried out, almost to the clearing itself. Suddenly the woman beckoned, her hand outstretched. "You must decide," she repeated, each word weighted with urgency. That's when I saw it, a dark shape in the distance, creeping toward us, and I realized the choice was mine alone. I felt my pulse quicken. Whatever I decided next would have grave consequences. I took a step back, everything around us blurring into chaos. The weight of that decision pressed harder against my chest. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, a dark tide swelling at the edge of my sanity. "What do I choose?" I murmured, though I didn't know who I was asking. The woman's hollow eyes bored into me, pleading but also somehow knowing. "Choose me, and you may save us," she urged, her voice low and frayed. The shadows behind her swelled, as if they could sense my hesitation, their growling intensifying in a foreboding chorus. I glanced down at the child, who clung to my sleeve tightly, his small body trembling. "What if she's lying?" I whispered to him, needing reassurance that I wasn't alone in this. But the child only shivered harder, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Please," the woman insisted. "The creature hungers for light, for souls. With my help you can escape." But trust wasn't so easily given, especially when the growling beast loomed just outside the fading glow of the light. I felt my instincts screaming at me to run. I couldn't risk the chance of being trapped here, trading one danger for another. "We have to go!" I shouted, turning around to pull the child away from the shadowy figure. But just as I turned, the shadows surged forward, and the ground shook beneath our feet. A sudden breeze, cold and biting, swept across the clearing, pushing me back toward the woman. Her hand reached out, and for a brief moment I felt warmth radiating from her, a flicker of hope in the torrid chaos. Then everything changed. The shadows rippled like water, morphing into grotesque shapes. They were bolder now, revealing twisted forms and faces half concealed in the dark. They moved closer, their snarls sharper, more distinct. I needed to act. "Follow the light!" I yelled to the child, and without looking back I sprinted forward, dragging him along. The light flickered, but held just enough as I focused on its pathway. We stumbled through the clearing, the glowing ribbon guiding our way. The cries of the woman faded into the background, mingling with the sounds of the beast approaching. I didn't have to see it to know it was right behind us, its breath hot against our skin. Then it happened. An icy gust whipped through the clearing, extinguishing the glimmer of light. We were swallowed by darkness. My heart raced as I pressed the child against me, trying to shield him, but the shadows were closing in. "Is this it?" I gasped, praying for any flicker of hope. Disoriented and terrified, I suddenly remembered something. "The ribbon! We have to find it again!" With resolve, I edged through the dark, clinging to the whispers of the woman's voice that guided me in my mind. "Choose," she had said. But what if I chose wrong? I wished I could see her one more time, to make sense of her words, to understand the danger. Then I heard it, a muffled light pulsing faintly in the back. I raced toward it, my legs aching from fear and fatigue. I was so close, but I could feel the shadows clawing at my back, relentless as they pressed forward. It was then I realized it wasn't just a choice of whom to trust. It was deciding my own fate. I stretched out my hand, desperate to reach that light. The moment my fingers brushed against its surface, everything ignited. And then, everything went dark. I blinked awake in the cabin, the gentle hum of the heater filling the silence around me. Disoriented, I rubbed my eyes, struggling to piece together what had just happened. Was it all just a nightmare? The deep, haunting growls, the shadows reaching for me, the child pleading for help, it felt too real to dismiss. I shot up from the couch, scanning the room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the familiar walls. My heart raced as the memories flooded back. I bolted toward the door, flinging it open to gather the cold, crisp air. Snow lay undisturbed, a stark contrast to the frenzy I had just experienced. I staggered outside, glancing around for any sign of what had haunted me. The woods stood still, tranquil, yet a nagging sensation gnawed at my insides. Something had shifted, but what? I ventured toward the tree line, heart pounding, recalling the child's agitated face, the warning of creatures lurking. As I stepped into the woods, the silence pressed down heavily. I felt like a stranger, a trespasser in a world once inviting. I followed the path I had taken before, focusing on each step, each soft crunch of snow. I reached the old lantern, now just a frail shell of rust, its memories fading like a dream. No shadows, no whispers. But something was wrong. I could feel it. My gaze fell on the ground, where faint tracks interrupted the pristine surface. They disappeared into the underbrush, leading deeper into the woods. I hesitated, the weight of memories pressing against my will. Should I follow? Could I confront the spectres of my imagination once more? With a determined breath, I edged forward, my mind racing with questions. I needed closure. Whatever lay ahead, I needed to understand if it was real or a figment of desperation. I pushed through the trees, deeper into the thickets, yet each step felt heavier, carrying the baggage of fear. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled into a clearing. The air shimmered with an ethereal glow, much like where I had met the child. Memories surged, and the atmosphere hummed, filled with a strange resonance. I closed my eyes, listening intently. The disembodied whispers returned, fading in and out like echoes of a forgotten past. Aaron. I shivered, the voice hauntingly familiar, but slippery as smoke. I opened my eyes, scanning the shadows for the child. No trace. But what about the others? The growls, the faces, and the woman. Would they return? "I'm here!" I shouted into the emptiness. "What do you want from me?" The wind rustled through the leaves, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw movement at the edge of the clearing, but it was gone before I could focus. My heart raced. Was I truly alone, or had they just retreated, waiting for me to let my guard down? I turned back the way I came, the unease swelling inside me. As I stepped back through the thicket, the air felt thicker, pulling me in all directions. Each footfall seemed to mingle with the whispers, the shadows dancing just beyond sight. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting something to lunge from the dark, but nothing followed. Then I remembered the locket in my pocket. In the grip of fear, I hadn't dared to open it. I pulled it out, feeling its cool surface in my palm. Perhaps it contained an answer, or a curse. I fumbled with the latch, and to my surprise, it sprang open. Inside, a tiny photograph stared back at me, a snapshot of the very child I had encountered. My breath caught. There was something sweetly innocent about the image, yet something dark below its surface. I lifted it closer, gazing at the depth of those hollow eyes, and in that moment, I understood. He was part of this, tied to the woods, a messenger caught between two worlds. Suddenly, a low growl vibrated through the trees, jolting me from my thoughts. The shadows stirred, a swirling mass ready to descend. "Time to choose," the voice whispered in the tumbling wind. I stood frozen, the locket clutched tightly. Was this a game, a trick, or was it the moment that would decide my fate? "Aaron," the haunting whisper echoed, plunging me back into the heart of the forest, into the choices I had yet to comprehend. I turned on my heel, heart racing. The edge of the woods met the sunlight behind me, and in that moment I had to decide, to face the darkness, confront the shadows, or run into the light, leaving unanswered questions behind. As I took a step, I felt the weight of the woods around me. I glanced back one last time, the child's eyes flashing in my memory. Whether supernatural or mere figments of my mind, the experiences had altered me. Would I ever truly be able to escape this tangled web? I forged ahead, ready to confront whichever truth awaited me, ready to face the shadows. But lingering questions remained, the darkness still coiled behind me, waiting for my ultimate decision. Out there, beyond the clearing, something was still watching, and though I chose the light, I would never forget the shadows tracing my steps.